ඔබ සැමට උතුම් දළදා සමුදුන්ගේ ආශිර්වාද ප්‍රාර්ථනා පෙරදරිව ඓතිහාසික කන්දුඩරට ඇසල පෙරහැර මහා මංගල්‍යයේ අවසන් කුඹල් පෙරහැරේ සිරි විසුතුර ඔබට ගෙන එන්නට අප සූදානම්. මල්ලොත් අස්කිරි උභය මහා විහාරීය මහානායක මාහිම්පාණන් වහන්සේලාගේ අවවාද අනුශාසනා පෙරදරිව ශ්‍රී දළදා මාලිගාවේ ගරු දේවන් නිලමේතුමන් සිව් මහා දේවාලයන්හි බස්නායක නිලමේතුමන්ලාගේ සංවිධාන ශක්තියෙන් පෙරහැර සංවිධානය වෙනවා. අද දිනේ පෙරහැර කරුණුන් වහන්සේ වැඩම කරවීම ඉන්දිරාජා හස්තියා විසින් සිදු කරනු ලබනවා. ඒ නිසාවෙන් අද දවසේ නිවසේ රැඳී සිටින ඔබට මේ පෙරහැර විසිතුරු නැරඹීම සඳහා POTV නාලිකාංක 20, ඩයලොග් නාලිකාංක 140, ෆ්‍රීසෙට් නාලිකාංක 2 ඔස්සේ මේ පෙරහැර විසිතුරු අපි ඔබට සජීවව ගෙන එනවා. ඒත් එක්කම ශ්‍රී දළදා මාලිගාවේ සමාජ ජාල වෙබ් අඩවි ඔස්සේ මාධ්‍යයන් ඔස්සේ ඔබට මේ පෙරහැර විසිතුරු නැරඹීමට පුළුවන්. ඒ නිසාවෙන් බොහොම ගෞරවයෙන් ඔබට ආරාධනා කරනවා මේ වෙසෙස් වූ මහා සංස්කෘතික මංගල්‍ය අසිරිය අත්විඳින්නට අපත් සමග එක්කාසු වන්නට. අරුණි
Kandy Esala Perahera 2022 இறுதி நாள் கும்பல் பெரஹரா வீதிவலம் வருவதற்காக தயாராக உள்ளது. ஸ்ரீ தலதா மாளிகை ஊடகமூடாக பெரஹராவை காண்பதற்காக உங்கள் அனைவரும் அன்புடன் அழைக்கின்றோம்.
Showcasing the unique identity of our own traditions and customs, commenced right now is the fifth and the final Kumbal Procession of Esala Perahera 2022. Today, the golden casket will be carried by the honor of Indiraja Tasker, who will be accompanied by colorful, various traditional items which signifies the unique identity of Sri Lankan culture. So we would like to invite all of you to come to the sacred city of Kandy and witness this utmost live action through your own eyes. And also I would like to invite everyone who is connected right now through the cyberspace to stay tuned with us through our social media and channel number 20 POTV, channel number 140 Dialogue TV. Please add channel number 2 as well.
Dalada Samidu Pihitai.
We are delighted to welcome you to the special live broadcast of the final Kumbal Procession, brought to you by the Media Bureau of the Shri Dalada Maligawa.
You're seeing the Perahera officials obtaining the permission and blessings of the Deva Nilame, the lay custodian of the sacred tooth relic, before commencing their street parading.
This is the handing over of keys by the Devadana Nilame to the officiating bhikkhus.
Most Venerable Vendiruwe Shri Ratnapala Upali Anunayaka Thero of Asgirial Chapter, carrying the Perahera casket from the Udumahala, the upper floor, to the lower level.
What you are seeing now is the Perahera casket, which contains 32 relics of Lord Buddha, being placed within the Runhill gate, mounted on the lavishly costumed Tusker, who will add colour and glamour to this final Kumbal Procession.
We see the Perahera officials offering flowers and garlands to the Perahera casket. It is the final night procession of the Kumbal processions.
This is the devout moment when the great Tusker steps majestically down from the Maha Vahalkada, the main entrance, to the Sandagala, the moonstone, in preparation to parade the streets of the city. And this evening, the Perahera casket will be carried by the royal Tusker Indiraja, belonging to the Shri Dalada Maligawa. You are now seeing the aerial images of the historic city of Kandy in preparation to host the final Kumbal Procession of the Kandy Esala Festival 2022. And this evening, the final Kumbal Procession will be parading down the Dalada Vidya, the Yati Numara Vidya and the Raja Vidya.
Whip crackers, walking up front with the sound of whips piercing through the skies, are the whip crackers announcing that the procession has started, and the whip master clearing the way for the sacred casket and the king. In the ancient times, it was the ruling king who would parade the streets, but now it's the Devadana Nilame, the lay custodian of the sacred tooth relic, for whom the streets are being cleared.
It is also believed that the sound of the whip cracking depicts the sound of thunder and lightning, paying homage to rain gods, requesting to bless our crops and cultivations with rain.
The whip master's duty is handed down from generation to generation of their clans. Only those who have mastered the art of whip cracking will be taken for the processions. According to the traditions, those who do not have this pedigree are not even worth being called such.
And this evening, the troop of whip wielders will be led by Mr. Upali Jayaratna.
Many onlookers will throw thousands of coins to the streets in the belief that this will ward off any evil from their loved ones and for blessings from the sacred tooth relic.
This is a beautiful tradition that highlights the basis for giving, offering, and sharing among people of our land. Sri Lankans are among the top in the world in the giving index. That is indeed the influence of the teachings of Lord Buddha. Regardless of how rich or poor they are, they offer their coins in great devotion and joy to the Procession as their minds are conditioned to giving.
The whip, which is 2 meters long, has to be carefully manipulated without hurting his colleagues or the onlookers.
This is the final evening of the Kumbal Procession processions, where we will be moving on to the Randoli Processions from the next evening onwards.
rain does not come with thunder alone. Just as lightning flashes across the skies, the procession too has its flashes of light dancing across the faces of people lining in the streets to watch. This is the offering of fire, inviting the rain gods to water our lands with rain.
And this is the fireball dancers, who are being led by Mr. E.D. Tilakaratna.
The lightning, which comes with the rains, a phenomenon of nature, is magnificently depicted by this group of fireball dancers. The sun, moon, earth, universe, solar month, night and day are all cyclic, and the fire dancers highlight these universal cycles and how they burn and cool us in our life cycles.
The turning of the fireballs is called Pandampalia, which paints the night with varied patterns of light, illuminating the procession.
The splendor of the dance is seen when a large group of them perform simultaneously, merging their various fiery elements into an amazing display of light and heat. The tradition is handed down from generation to generation, with individuals of all ages, from the very young to the very old, taking part in the display of this priceless and cultural heritage of their clan.
The oil-soaked rags are tied into an iron wheel with leather thongs, and once those are lit and the dancers perform their dance by turning the wheels fast, gradually increasing the speed, it's akin to lightning.
The fiery cycle of samsara, flooded with desire, ignorance, and anger, is highlighted by the chakras painted by the fire dancers.
The fire dancers need to be completely focused in their mind and body and immersed in their act as they create their cyclic patterns of fire. This is because the slightest inattentive move could result in danger. And now we are seeing the arrival of the flag bearers, led by the national flag of Sri Lanka. And these flags are quite special as they are the Buddhist flags, and this team is represented by the open prison camp of Pallekele.
The sight of the Buddhist flag creates a sense of tranquility on the onlookers, reminding them that this is in celebration, devotion, and an offering to Lord Buddha and Bodhi, his understanding of Dhamma.
The Buddhist flag is a symbol of faith and peace. The 6 colors of the flag represent the colors of the aura that emanated from the body of the Lord Buddha when he attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. The horizontal strips represent the races of the world living in harmony, while the vertical strips represent eternal world peace. The colors represent the perfection of Buddhahood and Dhamma.
Blue is for universal compassion, yellow is for the middle path, red is for blessings, white is for purity and liberation, orange is for unshakable wisdom.
This meaningful flag was jointly designed by Mr. J.R. De Silva and Colonel Henry Steele Olcott to mark the revival of Buddhism in Ceylon. It was accepted as the international Buddhist flag in the year 1952 at the World Buddhist Congress.
The ceremonial procession is performed in adulation of the living Buddha as well as a paramita for the future Buddha.
The 6-colored flag is displayed in ceremonious form to remind the people simply of the great scope and depth of the Dhamma preached by the Lord Buddha. And now we are seeing the army of sword bearers represented by the Angampura team of the Sri Lanka Air Force.
The sword carriers are providing protection to the Perahera casket. Clad in white dhoti and a white headdress, carrying the raised swords, not in warfare, but a disciplined walk of calm serenity. These sword carriers symbolize the protection given to the tooth relic over the history. Those who know the history of the tooth relic would be proud of our history and the heroes who protected the sacred tooth relic at all times.
And now, following the sword bearers, we see the first elephant in tonight's procession with the Peramunerala.
It is the norm of the procession that the Peramunerala, or the front runner of the procession, is the first person on elephant back, and neither officials nor elephants are permitted to parade before the Peramunerala.
And the elephant leading the procession today is Banda, belonging to the Honourable Diyavadana Nilame Pradeep Nilangadala. And interestingly, Banda is one of the few elephants who came walking all the way from Ratnapura to the historic city of Senkaragala to take part and obtain blessings from the sacred tooth relic of Lord Buddha in the Kandy Esala Perahera 2022.
Clad in a white costume and a triangular hat, the Peramune runner comes into view ceremoniously carrying the secretarial scroll, Lekam meteor, encased in a round, long silver casket as part of the traditions of the procession.
What you can see is the magnificent city of Kandy welcoming the final Kumbal Procession this evening. After the Kapsituvina or the planting of the jack plant, the internal Devala processions, we have now reached the end of the segment of the Kumbal Procession processions, and now we are seeing the first Hevisi group of the Shri Dalada Maligawa.
These are the 4 Hevisi drum beaters who are permanently seconded to the service of the Shri Dalada Maligawa. Their presence in the front of the procession is a tradition and they perform with majestic skill. No Panchaturya Vadana, the traditional orchestra of Sinhala music, or making musical sounds using either drums or other instruments is permitted before them.
This Hevisi group, presenting the traditional orchestra of Sinhala music of Panchaturya Vadana using the Panchaturya Banda or the 5-fold musical instruments. The instruments include the Daula, the Thammatama, the hand cymbals and Horanava, the traditional Sri Lankan horn, which are all played together to create a symphonic sound. And this is a sign to the most skilled Hevisi generations of the temple to ensure that the instruments are played in the correct order.
The most skilled Hevisi drummers, lineages of the Shri Dalada Maligawa, namely Uduvela, Malagamana, Ihalavela and Molaguda, are represented in the first row, serenely marching to the beat of the drums. They are contributing with great devotion to the celebration. The 4 leaders depict the recognition given to them by the king through the ways in which they decorate their Hevisi drums.
The drums are being incorporated to make a unique sound. We hear the beats of the drums and the tunes of the Horanava soaring up to the skies and above the Senkaragala kingdom. traditional Sri Lankan orchestra of Havisi is of many different varieties of styles, including the upcountry, the low country, and the suburban. And the special feature of the Kandy Esala Perahera is that this procession will only showcase the beauty and the richness of the upcountry tradition of music and dance. In fact, the role of Havisi is a vital element in different parts of the Kandy Esala Perahera, where we will be expecting to see a troupe of Havisi in each segment of the procession of the Dalada Maligawa, the Shri Maha Devalaya, the Shri Maha Vishnu Devalaya, the Shri Maha Devalaya, and the Shri Maha Patindewali.
What you're seeing right now is a combination of Daula and Thammatama being played.
Indeed, the two variants of the drums include the Vitathatata, which means the drums which are played using the hand and the stick, represented by the Daula, and the Vitata, meaning the drums which are played only using the sticks, represented by the Thammatama or the kettle drum. You are seeing the arrival of the majestic Gajanayaka Nilame with his silver anchors walking up front in this final Kumbal Procession. And the tusker is Kotala, belonging to Venerable Alutnora Anuruddha Nayaka Theru, the chief incumbent of the Kotte Rajamahaviharaya.
The Gajanayaka Nilame was the royal official in charge of the king's troop of elephants, and it was a position given to him directly by the king himself. To symbolize the fact, Gajanayaka Nilame, who is attired in a colorful Sinhala Mulanduma, majestically approaches on his tusker, and he is in charge of all the elephants and tuskers who walk in the procession.
And now we are seeing the Kotala Padaya dance, represented by Mr. Nalin Jayasekara of the Shri Dalada Maligawa School of Dance.
The water carrier dance depicts purity. The dance is simple and an example of the simplicity of Buddhism. It's a recent addition to the Dalada procession.
This dance symbolizes the sprinkling of saffron water from the pots in their hands along the path of the procession to purify the path. Seeing the holy pot is considered a welcoming sight, which in turn leads to well-being and faith.
Kotala Padaya is a classical dance adapted to the Perahera from the grand old ritual named Kohomba Kankarya. The steps and the extended arms add glamour to the procession. of course, the attire adds color.
The reason in which the Kotala dance is added as the first dance item of the Perahera procession is to purify the path as represented with the sprinkling of the saffron water, which is considered as one of the most purest form of substances in Sri Lanka. And now we are seeing an official carrying a Buddhist flag on a tusker, and this official symbolizes the fact that this is truly a Buddhist festival. And he is on the mount of Pulatisi Raja, the tusker belonging to the Shri Dalada Maligawa. Interestingly, Pulatisi Raja is the youngest and the latest addition to the Shri Dalada Maligawa stable of elephants, as he was gifted to Sri Lanka in the year 2017 from the government of Myanmar. Interestingly, Pulatisi Raja is one of the very few tuskers in Sri Lanka who understands languages of both Burmese and Sinhalese in communication.
Next in line is the Thalam Dance. Thalam Dance is a popular dance found in many parts of Sri Lanka, and this is the Kandian form of the Thalam Dance to the vibrant sounds of the Gataberia and Thammatama, the accompanying drums. Dance with a colorful cloth attached to the thalam, a small symbol, falls under Rupanatu, meaning picturesque dance. Creating colorful patterns on air.
Even though this musical instrument is quite small in size, the thalam or the castanet, meaning the small cymbal, is an important and vital element in traditional dancing of Sri Lanka, as the thalam of the small cymbals is the instrument that is used to keep pace and maintain the tempo of the traditional dancing, which is known as the Titmatra. This Thalam dance is represented by Mr. Nimesh Sumanaratna of the Chandananda Buddhist School in Kandy. And now we see an official carrying a brass umbrella, symbolizing cover to the impending sacred tooth relic. And he is on the mount of the elephant Kandulavira, belonging to Venerable Kanangama Narada Thero, the chief incumbent of the Kaduela Sankapiti Vihara. Kandulavira was the mascot of the Sri Lanka army as Kandula IV from the year 1983. He resided in the Pinnavala Elephant Orphanage after his retirement from the Sri Lanka army and was thereby gifted to the Kaduela Sankapiti Vihara by the former minister Vimal Veeravansha in the year 2012. It is interesting to note that Kandulavira is an elephant who obeys the hand signal commands. And following Kandulavira, we now see the approach of the Nayandi dance.
Nayandi is the name of this particular costume, consisting of the lower part of the vest costume, but the headgear is replaced by a simple turban.
What you are now seeing are the performers who just performed the Narumatra, which is one of the iconic episodes of the West and the Nayandi dance, which involves holding both ends of their loincloth.
These are vigorous dancers. Their movement is like lightning and stepping is quick. They attract the spectators with their aggressive motions.
Just like the aggressive motions, we can see how this Nayandi Dance Act is a balance of aggression and the calm movements, as the West dance, or the Nayandi dance as we see in front of us, is considered the most majestic among all styles of upcountry traditional dancing. Carrying a snake head canopy to symbolize protection to the impending Perahera casket. And this elephant is Madhu. Madhu belongs to Venerable Murundeni Damratana Thero, the chief incumbent of the Mutyangana Rajamaha Vihara in Baduri. Madhu was an elephant who was once found caught in a snare which is called a madda in Ceylonese, and due to the fact that he was the baby elephant who was rescued from a snare or madda, he was named Madhu by the Elephant Transit Home in Udavalade and was gifted to the Mutyangana Rajamaha Vihara in the year 1998. And now, following Madhu, we see a mixed folk dance.
This is somewhat a modern concept to combine different types of traditional folk dancers in one group. There are a combination of Likeli, stick dance, Thalam, the small cymbal dance, Savaram, the tussle dance, Chamara, the large tussle dance, and Rabang, the tambourine dance.
And different to the other classical dance forms, this mixed folk dance is more colorful, joyful, diverse in dancing patterns, energetic and fast-paced, adding color and glamour. If one may wonder the speciality of these types of dance all combined together, they are known as the folk dancers, which are quite different from the Shanti Karma Natu, or the dancers generated from the healing festivals. And this team is being led by Mr. PCB Vijay Surya. This is the majestic sky of Kandy, as we see the aerial images of the Kandy Perahera now running down the Dalada Vidya, adjacent to the Kirimoda, or the most famous Kandy Lake. And now we are seeing the approach of two majestic elephants with officials carrying brass umbrellas, symbolizing shelter and cover to the approaching Perahera casket. And these elephants are Punchi Banda, belonging to Mr. Kitsiri Mewan Velagedara of Polgahavela, and Raja, belonging to Mrs. Sita Senanayaka Mallava of Hettimulla. Punchi Banda and Raja are very closely attached elephants, quite friends with each other, including their mahouts itself, and the two of them have been parading in the Kandy Esala Perahera next to each other ever since 2016.
What you're seeing now are the Pantheru dancers. The Pantheru is a small brass circular frame instrument with small cymbals fixed to it to give a subtle metallic sound as it shakes. It was originally used to keep the beat in the chamber of versifiers. Since the 18th century, the instrument was used for development of semi-classical dance form.
This troupe of majestic Pantheru dancers are being represented by Mr. Sarath Vijayasiri of the Upcountry Dance Faculty. It is a special note that there is a special connection between the Pantheru dance and the Kandy Esala Perahera, since it is believed by the professionals that the most authentic form of Pantheru dancing can only be witnessed in the Kandy Esala Perahera due to the use of the authentic traditional costume in performing this dance. Following this Pantheru dance troupe, we are seeing two tuskers with officials carrying brass umbrellas to signify shelter to the impending Perahera relic casket. The two tuskers are Sindhu belonging to Vishnu Siddhartha Sumangala Mahanayaka Theru, the chief prelate of the joining with Singharaja, the prince of the Shri Dalada Maligawa stable, who have been walking together in the procession for the past couple of evenings. Sindhu was once a baby tusker who was parading with the young elephants in the Kandy Esala Perahera, and it is surprising to see his grown height, quite equal to the colleague casket bearer Singharaja, as they are seen walking together in the procession this evening. Sindhu was gifted to the Malvatu Mahavihara in the year 2009 by the former Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksha, and Singharaja, on the other hand, was found as an orphaned elephant off in the wilds of Vaunia and was gifted by the Sri Lanka Army Singha Regiment to the Sri Dalada Maligawa in the year 1995. just as Singharaja and Sindhu passed our sight, we are now going to witness the most awaited and the most iconic moment of this evening's final Kumbal Procession, the arrival of the West Dance troupe to escort the royal tusker who will be carrying the Procession relic casket.
The most unique and most recognized of the Kandian dance heritage is a fully adorned West Natua or the Kandian Dancer. The Kandian Dancer's skill and dance form have been considered an expression of Sri Lankan culture. The West Dance is more than just a ritual. It is a sacred recitation for protection against misfortune. Therefore, the dance costume is also considered sacred.
This most glamorous costume symbolically represents the regalia of King Malaya, the royal brothers who performed the ancient rituals of the Hatapas Mangala, a ceremony that was held 2500 years ago. The headgear symbolizing the sun rays and the semicircular front piece is known as the Sikha Bandana.
As the drums beat, the dancer moves his hands, feet and body in perfect harmony with fellow performers until the crescendo of his performance, which everyone in the audience awaits in anticipation.
The role of performing as the West dancers have been passed on from generation to generation, and performing right in front of the royal tusker carrying the Procession relic casket was always delegated to the families of Ihalavela and Vansekara, and this evening we are seeing Ishanta Ihalavela on one line and Lasantha Vansekara on the other, leading their teams as they respectfully escort the royal troop of tuskers. Preceded by the Karya Karavana Korala, who is only seconded to the Deva Nilame, we are seeing the arrival of the majestic trio of tuskers. This evening, the Procession relic casket will be carried by the tusker Indiraja, belonging to the Shri Dalada Maligawa stables, who was gifted to Sri Lanka in the year 1989 by the former Prime Minister of India, Rajiv Gandhi. And accompanying Indiraja, we are seeing Miyan Raja and Buruma Raja, the accompanying colleagues of Indiraja, who was gifted to Sri Lanka in the year 2007 from the government of Myanmar as per the request of our former Prime Minister, Ratnasiri Wickramanayake. now we are seeing the chamber of versifiers following the Perahera relic casket.
The chamber of versifiers of Shri Dalada Maligawa, chanting praises of Lord Buddha. In the ancient times of kings, this chamber of versifiers sang to the king. Today, in the most serene manner, they chant the virtues of Buddha, playing the silver Udachi, silver Pantheru, silver Udachi, silver Pantheru, instruments given to them by the king.
And now we are seeing the second and the final troop of West dancers who are assigned to escort the arrival of the Deva Nilamai. In the ancient times, the West dancers obtained a royal honor after they dispelled unseen inimical forces that threatened the life of the king of Padua story.
Dancers are singing and dancing Gajagavanama as they pave the way for the Devadana Nilamai, or the lay custodian of the sacred tooth relic, performing salutary hand gestures known as Vandum At, meaning hands of worship.
Just like the previous group of West dancers, even in this particular position, the role of escorting the Devadana Nilamai was historically assigned to the families of Verapitiya and Surasena. And in this evening, we are seeing the dancing troops led by Sanjeeva Verapitiya and Peter Surasena dancing to their heart's content, escorting the arrival of the Devadana Nilamai. One may wonder whether these dancers are being performing in this procession for something monetary in return. But the reality is that all of consider as their biggest privilege to perform in the Kandy Esala Perahera. And whatever you see is complete devotion of these talented Sri Lankan artists.
And also an offering to Lord Buddha.
And now, as per the tradition of the fifth and final Kumbal Procession, the role of the Diyavadana Nilame will be represented by the Honourable Basnayaka Nilame of the Shri Maha Patindewali in Kandy. And today we see Hemantha Bandara, the Honourable Basnayaka Nilame of the Shri Maha Patindewali in Kandy, walking in his majestic glance in the fifth and final Kumbal Procession. And following the representation of the Deva Nilame, we see the officials representing the 10 villagers and the guards holding their protective weapons. While this would mark the end of the Dalada Perahera, we would be now moving on to the splendor of the Devala Perahera processions, starting off with the procession of the Shri Maha Natha Devalaya. You are now seeing the Chief Trustee of the Shri Mahanatha Devalaya venerably carrying the godly ornaments of God Natha outside of the shrine towards the ceremonial elephant who will be carrying the godly ornaments of God Natha this evening in the 5th Kumbal Procession. And this evening, the ceremonial elephant of the Sri Mahanatha Devalaya will be Bibila from Kiriulla. And now we are seeing the troop of Buddhist flag bearers of the Sri Mahanatha Devalaya, who are represented by the Civil Defence Unit of Palakali. The role of the Buddhist flag being carried majestically, leading the procession of God Natha, is to symbolize the fact that God Natha or Maitri Bodhisattva is the God that is believed to attain next in Buddhahood. Therefore, unlike the other processions, God Natha is believed to be a god of Buddhist nature. The Sri Mahanatha Devalaya in Kandy is believed to be one of the oldest monuments in the Kandian kingdom, which is erected in the lucky plot of land known as the Jayabhumiya, which was first the home of the old Dalada Maligawa.
It was in front of God Natha that the kings held their coronation, wore swords, and named the king by drawing the lots.
We are now seeing pictures of the Dalada Vidya while hosting the procession of God Natha in its authentic splendor up here in the city of Kandy.
And the Buddhist flags are swaying to the wind blowing from Hanthana mountains over the Kirimuhuda.
The reason why in which the procession of God Natha is first to proceed out of the four Devala processions is due to the fact that it is God Natha who is believed to be enlightening as the next Buddha, and the four Devala shrines will be assigned on their order based on the order in which they will attain Buddhahood. And now, following the flag bearers, we are now seeing the official heavy troop of the Shri Maha Devalaya, who are being trained and led by Mr. S.Y.G. Vijay.
The site of the citadel of Kandy City.
Just like the Hevisi troop of the Shri Dalada Maligawa, the Hevisi troop of the Shri Natha Devalaya is unique to itself, since they will be playing the tunes that are unique to God Natha, which are used in the Thevava or the offerings that are made on a routine basis for God Natha.
The Hevisi group presenting the traditional orchestra of Sinhala music of Panchaturya Vadana, using Panchaturya Banda, the five-fold music instruments. The instruments include Dauda, Thamatama, hand cymbals, and Horanava, the traditional Sri Lankan horn. These are played together to create a symphonic sound.
similar to the heavy seat roof of the Shri Dalada Maligawa. Even in this part of the procession, we are seeing the influence of the Vitata, Vitatatata, Sushira and the Gana musical instruments. And now we are seeing the first elephant walking up front in today's Perahera. And this is the official carrying the flag of Senkadagala, known as the flag of God Natha, on the mount of the elephant Rohana, belonging to Mr. Varuna Kannangara of Horana. Following Rohana, we now see the Thalam Dance performance, who are being trained and led by Mr. Nima Jayasinghe of the Dilanataru Aesthetic Academy of Matale.
This dance, with the colorful cloth attached to the thalam, a small symbol, falls under Rupanatum, meaning picturesque dance.
And now we see the second elephant walking up front in the fifth Kumbal Procession in the procession of God Natha. And this elephant is Kandula, belonging to Mr. Roshan Patirana of Maharagama. And on the mount of Kandula we see an official carrying a Buddhist flag to once again symbolize the affiliation God Natha has with Buddhism. And now we are seeing the Pantheru Dance Act, which we see in the procession of God Natha. And this team will be represented by Mr. Asanka Karunaratna. Just as the previous Pantheru Dance Act we noticed in the procession of the Shri Dalada Maligawa, we can see how authentic and natural the costume that is worn by these Pantheru dancers to once again prove the fact that the most authentic form of Pantheru dancing can only be witnessed at the Kandy Esala Perahera. The historic Gata burial. And now we see the elephant Vijita Raja belonging to Venerable Milane Sri Lanka, the chief incumbent of Dalada Vihara in Polonnaruwa. And on the mount of Vijita Raja, we see two elephants carrying brass canopies, symbolizing the sun and the moon, to give us the idea that the procession will follow till the eternal existence of the sun and the moon. And now we are seeing the Udachi Dance Act, which is trained and led by Miss Indra Kumari of the Shri Sarasavi Eastrik Academy of Vattegama.
The Udachi is a hand drum and holds a special place in the Dalada celebrations. It is also played in the daily rituals of the sacred tooth relic.
And now we are seeing the Kandian Dance Act of the Shri Deva Perahera in preparation to escort the arrival of the ceremonial elephant, who will be carrying the godly ornaments of God Natha. And this troupe of Nayandi dancers will also be led by Mr. Asanka Karunaratna. Unlike the procession of the Shri Dalada Maligawa, where we witness the West dancer escorting the ceremonial tusker, it is the tradition of the Kumbal Procession that we see the Nayandi dancers or the other West performers performing in front of the ceremonial elephant in the escorting down the route of the Perahera. What we just witnessed is the Narumatra, which is once again one of the most highlighted episodes of the Nayandi and the West Dance Act, which is performed by holding both ends of the loincloth. Preceded by the Chief Trustee of the Shri Mahanatha Devalaya, we are seeing the arrival of the ceremonial elephant dressed in saffron yellow, carrying the godly ornaments of God Natha. And this elephant is none other than Bibila, belonging to Mr. Udara Galapati of Giriyulla, who will be carrying the godly ornaments of God Natha for the very first time in his life, which is quite a remarkable moment of the fifth and final Kumbal Procession of 2022. And Bibila is escorted and accompanied by Parani, belonging to Mr. Samantha Vijayamanna of Medagoda, and Kumari belonging to Mr. Kamal Kitsiri of Kotala. Who you now see in front of you is the Chief Trustee of the Shri Maha Devalaya, who will be ceremoniously walking ahead of the ceremonial troop of elephants. This year we witnessed how the ceremonial arrival of the procession of God Natha in the Kumbal Procession series, which are just coming to an end, and will be brought to you in a much grander scale in the Randoli processions that will be happening from tomorrow. While that marks the end of the procession of God Natha, now we move on to the procession of the Shri Maha Vishnu Deva.
The godly ornaments of Shri Mahavishnu Devalaya being carried to be placed on the ceremonial tusker. And you will see blue as the color associated with God Vishnu.
Walking up front would be the provincial flag bearers of the Shri Mahavishnu Devalaya. Unlike the other parts of the procession where we saw Buddhist flag bearers walking up front in the procession, the reason why we see provincial and state flags being carried in the procession of God Vishnu is to symbolize the fact on how Lord Buddha assigned God Vishnu as the protector of Sri Lanka, which is the very reason why the state and the provincial flag bearers are being led ahead in the procession of God Vishnu to symbolize the fact that God Vishnu will be protecting all these flagged provinces and states. These provincial flags include the flag of the Western Province, the Central Province, the Sabaragamu Province, the Southern Province, the Northern Province, the Northwestern Province, the Eastern Province, and the Uba Province. tallest elephant of the Shri Maha Vishnu Devalaya, who will be carrying the official with the flag of the Satara Koralaya. The Satara Koralaya is defined as the headquartered region of God Vishnu, and this elephant walking up front is Taraka. Taraka belongs to Mr. Kularatna Vijayatunga, the chief trustee of the Kaduvela Shri Siddha Rankadu Pattini Devalaya. And it is interesting to note how this magnificent Taraka, believed to be the second tallest elephant in Sri Lanka, is parading for the very first time in this year's Kandy Esala Perahera. Following Taraka, we now see the official heavy troupe of the Shri Maha Vishnu Devalaya.
These heavy drum beaters, who are permanently seconded to the service of Sri Maha Vishnu Devalaya.
The unique feature of the Sri Maha Vishnu Devala heavy troupe will be the fact that they will be playing tunes that are unique and customary to the Tevava, or the offerings towards God Vishnu.
They too will be playing the same Panchaturya Banda, the fivefold music instruments, which is the Daula, Tamatama, hand cymbals, and Horanam.
One may wonder if the troupe of Havisi is only a troupe of performers that are essential for the Perahera festival, but in fact, the official troupe of Havisi of the Sri Dalada Maligawa and of the four Devala shrines, including the Sri Maha Vishnu Devalaya, will be essential in their daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly rituals that are done towards the respective god. And now we see the second elephant of the Sri Maha Vishnu Devalaya, who will be carrying on official the snakehead canopy to symbolize protection to the impending godly ornaments of God Vishnu. And And this elephant is Mutubanda, belonging to Venerable Murundeniya Dhammaratana Theru, the chief incumbent of the Muthiyangana Rajamaha Vihara in Badulla. Kandula was an elephant who once took part in the Shri Mahavishnu Devala Perahera for over 90% of his life, and with his passing away on the previous year, we see Mutubanda representing his senior Kandula in the Shri Mahavishnu Devala procession. And now we are seeing the Charmeral Dance Act, more or less known as the Savarang dance performance, led by these tuneful flute artists. These dancers are holding a prop which is known as the savarang, a stick which has two tassels attached to both ends of it. Though this dance act looks quite similar to the Charmeral dance which we saw previously in the procession of the Shri Dalada Maligawa, the difference between the savarang and the Charmeral dancers are that the Charmeral will only be having one tassel attached to the end, but the Savarang dance will have two tassels attached on both ends.
The Savarang dancers hold white-colored tassels in both hands and wear colorful costumes, adding color to the pageant. They dance in a group and move up and down the streets as if they are fanning the upcoming godly ornaments.
It can be interestingly noticed how different shades of the color blue are used in this part of the procession. And following these beautiful Savarang dancers, we are now seeing the arrival of Choti Manike, the elephant belonging to Mr. Bharata Amaratunga of Meegoda. And on the mount of Choti Manike, we see an official carrying a snakehead canopy to symbolize protection to the impending godly ornaments of God Vishnu. Now we are seeing the first Nayandi troupe of dancers in the procession of God Vishnu.
These Nayandi dancers are wearing colorful headgear, unlike the Shri Dalada Maligawa procession.
Indeed, The very difference between the West dance and the Nayandi dance itself is the special headgear. Following the beautiful Nayandi dance, we are seeing the arrival of two of the most prominent and senior participants of the Shri Maha and Vishnu Devalaya. On one side we have Muthu, the elephant belonging to Mr. Indika Mudurkot of Manikinna, and Banda belonging to Mr. Sisira Samarakon of Polkahavela. Following the beautiful walk of Muthu and Banda, we are seeing the arrival of the Udachi dance performance.
The specialty of these performers is that they play the instrument and join the procession while chanting verses that are dedicated to the great qualities and characteristics of God Vishnu. And now we see two of the most youthful elephants of the Shri Maha Vishnu Esala Perahera. On one side we have Rohana Raja, the tusker belonging to Mr. L.K. Vanniyarachi of Kotte, and on the other side we see the elephant Vastu belonging to Mr. Pradeep Miyanapalava of Mavanella. And now we are seeing the most iconic and the most awaited moment of the Shri Maha Vishnu Devalaya, the arrival of the ceremonial troupe of Tusker, who will be carrying the godly ornaments of God Vishnu, and this Tusker will be majestically escorted by these Nayandi dancers. And this evening, the ceremonial elephant of the Shri Maha Vishnu Devalaya will be the elephant Suranimala,
belonging to the Alutnuvara Dadimunda Devalaya, which is a holy shrine that is connected with the Shri Maha Vishnu Devalaya in Kandy. And this evening, Suranimala is accompanied by Sita, belonging to Mrs. Nilanthi Veera Singha of Mirigama, and Vasana, belonging to Mrs. Krishanti Alapatha of Ratnapura. Suranimala, who is named after one of the 10 most prominent giants during the time of King Dutugamuru, is indeed a blessing to his name, where he itself is one of the 10 tallest elephants who are currently living in the island. It is interesting to point out that the costumes worn by these ceremonial elephants are being made according to the technique of hand painting, which involves a lot of labor tasks involved. But such gifts are considered as forms of blessing, which is the main reason why the donors of such costumes do the task with much devotion and prestige. This is the chief trustee of the Shri Maha Vishnu Devalaya, who will be walking ahead of the ceremonial tusker. While that marks the end of the procession of God Vishnu, we are now moving on to the procession of the Shri Maha Katharagama Devalaya.
The godly ornaments of Shri Maha Katharagama Devalaya, God Katharagama, being carried, ceremoniously carried to the awaiting tusker.
And now we see the flag bearers of the Shri Maha Katharagama Devalaya leading the troop. It is interesting to notice how a combination of Buddhist flags, the flag of God Ravana, and the flag of God Katharagama being used in this procession. And one may wonder the reason why a flag, the Buddhist flag, is being used in a Perahera, which is connected to a shrine with more Hindu origin. The reason behind it is that it was God Katharagama who was delegated by Lord Buddha as the protector of Buddhism, which is the main reason why we see a troop of Buddhist flags being carried in the inception of the Shri Maha Katharagama Devala procession. This troop of flag bearers are represented by Mr. Dilan Chaturanga. One can notice how the peacock is being portrayed in many segments of this perahera, including the flag bearers. The reason behind it is that it is considered the peacock as the vehicle of God Kataragama. And now we are seeing the official Hevisi troop of the Shri Maha Kataragama Devalaya, who are being led by Mr. P.V. Javis Gurunansi.
The Kataragama Devalaya in Kandy had been built in the 14th century and it became more popular during the 16th century. It was dedicated to God Skandakuma or God Kataragama. It is believed that he has 6 faces and 12 hands.
Indeed, it is believed that the headquartered place of worship for God Kataragama in Sri Lanka is the Ruhunu Maha Kataragama Devalaya that is located deep down south of Sri Lanka in the district of Monaragala. But nevertheless, the Shri Maha Kataragama Devalaya, which is the only Devala shrine that is located outside of the Sri Dalada Maligawa premises, is considered as a key place of worship in the city of Kandy for God Kataragama. It is proven that any visitor who walks by the town of Kandy or down the Kotagodalla Vidya will never fail a visit to the shrine to obtain blessings from the god Skandakuma, popularly known as God Kataragama.
Color worn by most of the participants and also the costumes worn by the elephants would be red, since this is the color associated with God Kataragama.
Following the Hevisi troupe who will be playing the Gajaga Vannama or the Symphony of the Elephant, we are seeing the first elephant of the Shri Maha Kataragama Devala procession in this 5th and final Kumbal Procession this evening. And this elephant will be carrying the Gajanayaka Nilame, or the leader of the troop of elephants this evening. The elephant is Maniki, belonging to Mr. Anuratissa Kempitiya of Kulpane Kegol. It is the norm that the Gajanayaka Nilame of the Kumbal Procession festivals will be dressed in white attire and will be carrying a silver ankus. And the speciality of the ankus that is used by the Gajanayaka Nilame of the Sri Kataragama Devala is that it is the very same ankus that was used during the time of King Shri Vikrama Rajasingha. Following Manike, we now see an energetic Thalam Dance Act that is trained by Miss Ajanta Kandegedara of the Sarasavi Aesthetic Academy of Kegol. we are seeing the second elephant of the Shri Maha Devalaya, carrying officials with a snakehead canopy and a brass umbrella. And this elephant is Sudumanike, belonging to Mr. Buddhika Mirihella of Gane Tenna in Kadugannava. And now we are seeing a very energetic dance act, which is the Wood Tappers or the Lee Kelly dance performance. And this dance act will be trained by Mr. Upali Dharmaratna of the Upali Dharmaratna Aesthetic Academy of Matale. It is believed that the main form of offering by the devotees towards God Katharagama is energy and sweat, which is the main reason why most of the dance acts that we will be seeing in the procession of God Katharagama will be in faster tempo. And now we see another duo of elephants dressed in glamorous red walking up front in this procession, and they are Esala, belonging to Venerable Katugasthara Sharada Theru, the chief incumbent of the Senanayaka Mudalindarama temple in Pirisyala. And on the other side, we are seeing the elephant Mihila or Raju, belonging to Mr. Chamila Bandaranayaka of Kannuru. Following Raju and Esala, we now come to the Udachi dance performance of the Shri Maha Katharagama Devalaya. And this team of Udachi dancers will be trained by Mr. Dhammika Bandara Tennakon of the Dhammika Tennakon Aesthetic Academy of Napana.
The dance of the Udachi players is relatively simple. The musical instrument is a small double-headed hourglass-shaped hand drum used to accompany the chantings, which contributes to the variety of drum beats filling the air.
And now, following these majestic Udachi dance performers, we are seeing a duo of brotherly elephants. Both these elephants belong to Venerable Bengamue Dhammadina Thero, the chief incumbent of the historic Palmadulla Rajamahaviharaya. On one side we have the senior elephant Ratna, and on the other side we have the junior elephant Chula, both gifted from the Pinnaval Elephant Orphanage to the Palmadulla Rajamahaviharaya. Just as Ratna and Chula will pass our sight, we will be now moving on to the much awaited, then the most venerated moment of the Shri Maha Devala Perahera, which is the arrival of the ceremonial elephant carrying the godly ornaments of God Katharagama. And this ceremonial elephant too will be escorted by these majestic Nayandi dancers, who are being trained and led by Mr. Upananda Thalgahagoda of the Ratna Aesthetic Academy. The Nayandi dance form originates from the historic Pohba Kankharya or the Hatapas Mangalya that was held back then almost 2500 years ago to ward off evil of God the King Panduwastev from the curse of Kuweni, and still the traditions are being replicated in the Nayandi dance form, which will be replaced in the West dance seen in the Randoli procession starting from tomorrow. And now we are seeing the ceremonial Tusker Rama belonging to Mr. Hiran Gunasekara of Heyantudua under the care of Mr. Mahesh Vijayasekara of Attanagalla, and Rama is accompanied by Aruna belonging to Venerable Higgoda Saddhananda Theru, the late former chief incumbent of the Handala Rajamahawihara in Vattala, and Sankaraja belonging to Venerable Kokavala Kosala Theru, the chief incumbent of the Sankapala Rajamahawihara in Amilipitiya. It is interesting to comment that Rama, who was the ceremonial Tusker of the Shri Vishnu Devalaya over the past 4 days, will be taking part as the ceremonial Tusker of the Shri Kataragama Devalaya for the final Kumbal Procession, and can be expected to take part tomorrow in the first Randoli as well. We can be noticing this chief Iyer of the Kataragama Devalaya walking right in front of the ceremonial troop of Tuskers. While that marks the end of the Shri Maha Kataragama Esala Perahera, now we will be moving on to the final episode of tonight's fifth and final Kumbal Perahera, the procession of the Shri Maha Pattini Devalaya. We are now seeing pictures of the Basnayaka Nilame, the Alatti Ammas and the chief prelates doing their virtuous rites when bringing out the godly ornaments and statue of Goddess Pattini. This evening, the ceremonial elephant of the Shri Maha Pattini Devalaya will be Mangala, belonging to Mr. Udaragalapatti of Giriyulla. Walking up front, we can see the Buddhist flag bearers representing the procession of the Shri Maha Pattini Devalaya. And this troop of flag bearers will be represented by the Civil Defense Department of Pallekele.
goddess Pathini is a deity who commands great respect among most of the citizens of the country. The only female representation at the Dalada procession is the Pathini Shrine procession. Therefore, only in this segment of the procession we are able to see female dancers performing.
And now, following the Buddhist flag bearers, we are hearing the tune of the Gajaga Vannama being played by the Hevisi troupe of the Shri Patindewali, and they are being represented by M.G. Palithanishankar, M.G. Sirisena and M.G. Premadasa.
Folklore states that the goddess Pathini was a great model who preserved her chastity, and due to this great and noble quality, she could obtain the highest veneration of human beings. Belief in goddess Pathini with faith brings blessings on small children and women. She is supposed to be a goddess of noblest qualities, and those who believe in her will be cured of hidden diseases, skin diseases, and they will be provided with a religious full life.
If one may notice, whether the Hevisi troupe will be playing the same tune for the entire part of the procession. In fact, they will be changing the tune once they take turn to a new road. And now we see the first elephant of the Shri Maha Patindewali this evening, who is Isuru. Isuru belongs to Venerable Urulavatte Shri Dhammarakita Theru, the chief incumbent of the historic Mahiyangana Rajamavihara. And it is the special place for Isuru, as he is one of the few legendary elephants who are taking part in the procession of Goddess Pathini. And now, following Isuru, we can see the female Pantheru Dance Act. And this dance act is trained by Miss Vindhya Kumari from the Jayashani Udarata Nartana Kalayatane of Gorakagadeniya. the speciality of the procession of goddess Patini is that this is the only part of the festival where we are seeing female dancers taking part, given that goddess Patini is the only female representation among the 4 gods who are being venerated in the Kandy Esala Perahera. The Pantheru itself is an instrument that is connected to the legend of goddess Patini, as it is believed that this exact Pantheru is believed to be the anklet that is worn by goddess Patini, which is known in Sinhalese as the Patini Salama. And now we have a very special appearance. For the very first time in his life, the little Dev Sumana, belonging to Venerable Kolonnave Shri Sumangala Thero, the chief incumbent of the Pannipitiya Devram Vehera, will be taking part in the Kandy Esala Perahera. And while we welcome Dev Sumana to the Kandy Esala Perahera this evening, now we are seeing a female dance act. And this particular dance is identified as a female Nayandi dance performance that is trained by Miss Lakshmi Kumari of the Ketumati Aesthetic Academy of Murtalava. Just like how a male dancer would consider attaining the title of a West dancer, in the traditional female upcountry dancing, this concept is known as the Shirshabarana dance, which is quite similar or the feminine version of the West dance. It is believed that these dancers are also wearing half of the given headgear, which is why this dance is identified as the female Nayandi dance performance, where we will be seeing these exact dancers wearing their full costume in the Randoli Perahera processions that we will be seeing from tomorrow. And now, following these female Nayandi dance performers, we are seeing a very young elephant, Sanju, belonging to Mr. Jagat Vitana of Matugama. And following Sanju, we are seeing another mixed folk dance that is represented by Miss Takshila Sirivardhana of the Takshila Aesthetic Academy of Yatihalagala. Sri Lanka is always identified itself to be a country that is quite rich in its primary economic sector, and in that, agriculture is defined and identified as one of the key sources of industries that Sri Lanka is exposed to. And this exact dance performance paints a picture on how the routine village life deals with the industry of agriculture, where it shows the roles of men and women being used in the different tools that they use, including the dakatta used by the males, the willowing fan or the kulla, the pot, and finally the harvest that is used by the females. While the Shri Maha Patindewali procession once again proves the gender equality in the Kandy Esala Perahera, we are now seeing another female elephant taking part, and this is Sita, belonging to Mr. Roshan Patirana of Maharagama. And finally, following Sita, we now see a Thalam Dance performance that is once again trained by Miss Takshila Sirivardhana of the Takshila Aesthetic Academy of Yatihalagala. The tuneful beat of the Gataberea simply adds some value to the musical dance that is played using these talampata or the castanets. And now, following this castanet dance, we can see another female elephant who is Manika. Manika belongs to Mrs. Shriyani Gunawardhana of Dangobita and has been a consecutive participant of the Shri Maha Patindewali, playing major roles including being a Dala elephant or an accompanying character to the elephant carrying the godly ornaments. And now, following Manika, we see another Savarang dance performance. And this dance act is led by Miss Ajanta Kandegedara of the Sarasavi Aesthetic Academy of Mulagoda. A speciality of this exact dance performance is that it is not just the dancing that is being performed by the females, but including the percussion, the tuneful music that are played by the ladies. And this certainly adds much more glamour and attention to the final Kumbal Procession. Now we reach the final episode of this evening's fifth and final Kumbal Procession. The arrival of the ceremonial elephant carrying the godly ornaments and the statue of Goddess Patni. And this ceremonial elephant will be majestically welcomed by the Nayandi dancers. And these Nayandi dancers are trained by Mr. Mithun Bandara of the Mithun Bandara Aesthetic Academy of Vatapuduwa. It is interesting to note that the family of the Bandara Ranaviras have been performing in this exact role for many generations in escorting the ceremonial elephant of the Shri Maha Patindewali, and Mithun Bandara himself would be the third generation in keeping the customs and tradition. while these Nayandi dancers would be escorting the ceremonial elephant of the Shri Maha Patindewali, led by the chief trustee himself, we can see Mangala, the elephant belonging to Mr. Udara Galapatti of Giriyulla, majestically carrying the godly ornaments of goddess Pattini along with her statue. And this evening, Mangala is being accompanied by Bandara belonging to Mrs. Vijayanti Perera of Horana and Manike belonging to Mr. H.R. Nishankar of Kegor. And that marks the end of the fifth and final Kumbal Procession this evening. Let us hope that our country will be blessed with abundance of fertility and prosper. May our country prosper. Dalada Samidu Pehitai.